All right, this week we were talking about positions, and your students should start to realize that this is very different from when they practice with Scratch. Minecraft is a three-dimensional world, and so the conversation about positions is very important at one of these points. And I want to talk more in depth about what you need to do this week when it comes to talking about positions. In the presentation, I talk about that I want students to understand that in a three-dimensional world, there's not two axes, there's three. There's X, Y, and now what they probably are not familiar with, depending on their math level, is Z. And so in a three-dimensional world, you have three axes. And then we need to understand that these three axes are used in a three-dimensional world or in games like that. And so we start off the very first lesson talking about two-dimensional worlds. You have X and Y, and they should be pretty familiar with these areas because they've used it in Scratch. X and Y are very much a common thing in Scratch for position. But in a three-dimensional world, you obviously have the Z-axis, and this is always used in three-dimensional, and you can have that conversation with your students. The video does a pretty nice job. You can play the whole video. He talks about the right-hand rule to determine what the value of your Z-axis is. However, I think it's very important for the students conceptually understand that in a three-dimensional world, you do need that extra access to determine a position in code. The other lesson objective was them to understand the difference between a relative location and a world location. And what I mean by that is there's two sets of blocks here. Relative location is relative to the user. So my position in the game, if I want something to be placed 3 steps ahead of me or 3 blocks ahead of me, it doesn't matter where I am in the game, that code will always take place 3 blocks ahead of me. However, if I do a location in the game, it's like an address for a house. That will take the code or the action of the code will take place in that certain location in the game. That's why I use the reference of an address for your home, because your home doesn't move multiple spots. It's relative to that one location. In the student handout, I really talk about this as a lab experience for the students. So they're going to use this part to write down the lesson objective. What is position in code? What's the difference between 2D and three-dimensional world? But most importantly, I want them to go into Minecraft and put these 2 codes in. And it's really just to see what happens. Okay, so when they type in teleport and they put this exact code in there, what happens in the game? And so they're going to write out what they've experienced, what happens. But then when they type in this code, what happens in the game? And when they start to realize the difference between a relative location based off the player's location, which is this one, and then this one acts like a location or an address of a home. It happens in one particular spot every time when you type in this particular code. And when students are playing the game, they can start to realize that the position of the game changes, because here's my position on the top left over here in my Minecraft screen. As I move around, here's my 3 positions. Here's my X, Y, and Z. It never changes. So my X and my Z are changing, but not my Y. I'm in the same location for my Y. So this is like my world position here. The kids will actually be instructed to go through a tutorial. They can select 2 different tutorial worlds in this one. One is make compass rose, and the other one is leap of faith. Both of these use positions in the actual tutorial, and students can use this to learn more about positions in the game and versus relative positions. But what's most important is introducing the new Z-axis and how that's used in the actual coding positions. All right, so hopefully this wasn't too bad to understand. If you have any questions, please let me know. I will be more than happy to help you out.